What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video, and welcome back to another 2JZ build video. Finally, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a shimless bucket conversion on your 2JZ cylinder head. Now, I did manage to go and put down about 900 horsepower on these factory shimmed buckets. However, since we're going to be shooting for a little over 4 digits this time around, I figured a little added insurance would be a good idea. Now, in order to do this, you're going to need the following tools: a 3/8 drive ratchet with 10mm socket, 32mm box wrench, good quality feeler gauges, specifically from like Snap-on, Blue Point, something like that. I do not recommend using the Harbor Freight ones. A 0 to 1 inch outside micrometer, a torque wrench that can read 15 foot-pounds, as well as a pen and paper to write down your results. Real quick side note here, if you are doing this with the engine still installed in the car, make your life easier, pull the spark plugs out first, and then you also need a 1/2 inch breaker bar with appropriately sized socket for the crank pulley, since you'll be spinning the crank instead of spinning the camshafts individually. I'm going to be doing this on a bench today, as you're about to see, which is where that 32mm wrench comes in. Now, for this particular application, I am using the GSC S2 cams. The clearance we're going to be targeting is 10 thousandths on the intake side, or 0.010, and then 12 thousandths or 0.012 on the exhaust side. The torque values for the cam caps themselves are going to be 15 foot-pounds, which works out to be about 180 inch-pounds. Now, theoretically, this should be just fine. All I had to machine shop do on a cylinder head was deck it and then replace the valve stem seals just for some additional safety. So it should be pretty close, hopefully. Let's go ahead and see if that theory holds up. All right, so I got this all laid out just as I got it back from the machine shop. I did go ahead and put the factory buckets back in here. This is the exhaust side, this is the intake side. You know it's the intake side because we got our cam position sensors right up here as well as back here. As far as which cam is which, you always know this is the intake side because it has this little finger right in the middle of the cam, and this is for our cam position sensor. So let's go ahead and get that bolted in and torqued up. Another pro tip right here, if you've never taken one of these apart before, this is going to be the #1 intake side cap. Right here it says I1, and every single one of them is labeled, and then it's got an arrow pointed on it too, so you know which direction is forward. Also, before we go and torque these down, I'm going to throw some oil on all the journals as well as the shims, just to give it a little bit of lubrication. I mean, we're not going to be doing any kind of like RPM or anything like that with this, but you do want it to be able to go and spin freely to where it doesn't bind and you don't wind up with any metal on metal contact. Whenever you're doing this, it's always a good idea to double check the Tsrm. If you look at the diagram right here, this is the back of the cylinder head, which is why I have it kind of looking upside down. First one we're going to go and snug up a little bit is going to be cam cap number 3. Then we're going to come back here to cam cap number 7, followed by 5, then 4, then 6, then number 2, and then finally number 1. And whenever you're doing these, do it just like a quarter to a half a turn at a time. Like, you don't need to go crazy on this. Definitely do not use any power tools or anything like that, especially if you have like higher spring pressure, like beefier springs. You don't want to do that because it's real easy to go and snap a cam if you try to do that. It's a bad day. All right, so now that we got these snugged up, we're gonna go through and torque them down. This is gonna be 180 inch-pounds, which if you're using a foot-pound torque wrench, it's gonna be 15 foot-pounds. So we're gonna kick it off with cam cap number 3, then come back here to 7, then 5, 4, 6, 2, 1. I do strongly recommend laying out the feeler gauges you're gonna need, just because that way it makes it a lot easier instead of trying to flip through all these. Now we're gonna go and take our 32mm wrench, put it on this hex right here, and then, if I can show you guys this here, this one's actually in about the perfect spot. It just needs to get nudged back a little bit. But basically what you want is you want these lobes pointed at about the 1:30, 2 o'clock position, about 30 degrees off center, and then you're gonna do the same thing on the exhaust side, except it's gonna be pointed toward about the 11 o'clock position. I'm gonna take my 10 thousandths feeler gauge first and go ahead and slide it right under here. And as you can see, that's pretty snug already. Same thing with this guy. So we're gonna go and step down to the 0.008 or the 8 thousandths. Kind of see where that one's at. That's still pretty snug. And this one actually slides in really nicely right there. So whenever you're looking at these, you want it to be snug, but not like super tight, right? So like this is a good amount. I don't have to put in a whole lot of effort. It just slides right in and out. If I step up to the 9 thousandths one, you can see like it still fits, but you got to force it a lot. You don't want to force it. And then if we go down to 7 thousandths, this thing like slides in and out no problem. Like you can barely tell it's there. So for this number 2 intake valve, I'm going to go ahead and write down 0.008 because this is 8 thousandths, and then I'm going to keep miking this one and then do all the rest of these 12 and then jump over here So once I get all that data, I will go ahead and record everything and pick you guys up here in just a couple minutes, and we'll talk about what to do next.
1 hour later.
Alrighty, now that we got that all done, I'll go ahead and throw a screenshot up of the results right here. There were a couple that were actually super tight, like to the point where I couldn't even get my feeler gauge in there. So we'll talk about what to do with those here in just a few minutes. But now we need to go through and measure the actual thickness of both the bucket and shim together. This is gonna be how we determine which of the shimless buckets we need to order. All right, so in order to do this, first thing we're gonna do is take our nice flat magnet here. I'm gonna do intake valve number 1, put it on there, pull it right out, super simple. Then we're gonna take our micrometer here, and if you flip this thing upside down, you're gonna wanna go and put this right end of the micrometer right on the shiny bit in the center right here. Once it's in there, just go ahead and spin it down to where it's nice and snug. All right, now that we got this snug down, you can see right here the micrometer has a 2 right here, and then a 5 out here on this side. We don't need to go super far on decimal places, so we're gonna call this one 0.205. Now we just gotta do that 23 more times. After we've gone ahead and mic'd this, we gotta keep this organized. I personally like to use a little split egg container right here, so that way everything is nice and organized. All right, so instead of doing a pencil and paper and having you guys suffer through some more of my chicken scratch, I went ahead and made an Excel spreadsheet of all the results. Let's dive in and check it out. So you can see over here in column B, this is gonna be the clearance for each and every one of the valves. We have the intake ones up top and then the exhaust side down below. The over under is gonna be the amount of difference that it was. So for example, on intake valve number 6 right here, that was 5 thousandths clearance. That's 5 thousandths off from our target of 0.010 or 10 thousandths right over here. Now, whenever I mic'd it, it was 0.209, which means if we go and take the 0.209 minus the 5 thousandths, that gives us a total thickness of 0.204. So basically what that means is the clearance was too tight, all right, and we need to open up that space a little bit more. So in order to do that, we're gonna go and shrink down the total length, or total width rather, of the shimless bucket that we need to order. Conversely, if you had one that was too much clearance, like say for example, we had like 14 thousandths on one of these and we were trying to shoot for 10, then we would need to go and add material back in order to go and close that gap. So at that point, instead of subtracting off of the total measurement, you would add to it in that case. So after we get our adjusted thickness of 0.204, we need to convert that into millimeters. In order to do that, you're gonna go and take the measurement of the 0.204 times 25.4, and that'll give you a total thickness in millimeters of 5.182. Coincidentally, that part number is also right here. And I have all the part numbers that I need to go and order right down in this little section, so it makes that super duper easy. Now that we got all the results here, we have everything converted into millimeters, and I know exactly which part numbers I'm gonna need to order. We got all of our tallies right down over here, so that way I know exactly how many of each of these I need to go and order, and then also where they're gonna be going once they do finally come in. One thing I know you're probably wondering, I got a couple of these highlighted in red over here, specifically number 2, 4, and 5 on the intake side. The reason these are in red is because I could not, the smallest feeler gauge I had was 0.002, and I could not even fit that underneath there, which tells me that the back end of the lobe is probably resting right on the bucket right now, right on the shim right now. So what I did to go and counteract that was I actually took 12 thousandths off of that total measurement, just because I don't know how much it's getting depressed. Like I don't know how far down or anything like that that's getting smushed. So I figured if we went ahead and take 12 thousandths off of that, that should at least hopefully get us into the 10 thousandths ballpark, maybe might wind up being like 8 or 9 thousandths once it finally gets installed, but we'll check that here in a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and get all these shimless buckets ordered, so I'll pick you guys up here in just a few days when the parts come in.
Many months later.
And we're back. So it's actually been about a month since I started filming this video. Turns out a couple of the buckets that I needed were actually on back order, just like pretty much everything else. So Happy New Year. Good news though, because I do have all of the shimless buckets that we need, so that means we can go ahead and get back at it. Let's go ahead and get these things sorted, shall we? All right, so as you see, we got all these here. These are gonna be our intake valves. All of them are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And these are going to be the exhaust side over here. Now, before I drop these back in a cylinder head and we check them with the feeler gauges again, I am gonna go through and check them with the micrometer just to make sure all of these are the proper thickness that they should be. I've already spot checked a couple of them so far and everything's good to go, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of them just to make sure. All right, we got all the new shimless buckets mic'd. Everything was good to go. There were, I think, 3 of them that were off, like just barely. I'm talking like it should have been 0.206 and it measured at like 0.205. So it should be really, really close, but I'm gonna go ahead and get these things lubed up, get the cam slap back in there, and then we'll check the clearance on each of these and see if we're good to go, or if I need to order new buckets. We'll find out. All right, so we got the intake cam in, it's all torqued down. Now this is the moment of truth. We're gonna be looking at the numbers 3 and 4 valves, and remember we're gonna be looking for 10 thousandths, so 0.010, and hopefully this thing slides right in, no problem. All right, number 3 is good, that's like perfect. Number 2 is one of the ones that's a little tight, and this one's actually perfect too. So I'm gonna go up to 11 thousandths just to confirm. It's a little more snug, I don't like it as much. Perfect. Yeah, so this one's dead on. This is 0.010 all day. I'm gonna go ahead and check the other 22 of these, and I'll follow up with you guys here in just a second with the results. All right, guys, that is it for the shimless bucket conversion. Most of them were dead on. There were 3 of them total that were a little bit off. The number 1 intake valve is still giving me fits. I got the smallest shimless bucket that they had, and it only gave me 4 thousandths clearance total. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with that just yet. I'm probably gonna noodle on that, but we got a little bit of time to figure it out before the car gets back together and up and running. So that is it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and you found it useful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. I will see y'all very soon in the next one. Catch you next time.